Hey, period 4. So today we're going to do 1.2, adding integers with different signs. So same whole numbers, but with one positive, one negative, maybe it goes positive, positive, then a negative, but it's going to be different signs, not just positive, positive, and negative, negative. We're still adding. We're just going to do different signs. So I can add integers with different signs is our I can. So remember, I cans are what we should be able to say we can do after our lesson and after our practice. You'll also notice there is not a part 1 or part 2. We're going to do 1.2 in one day. So no part 1, no part 2. So our key terms is sum. Remember, that's just the total to an addition problem. So when we add things together, what is it? That's sum. And then we're going to talk about something called a zero pair today. It's when you add one positive to another number, which is one negative. So adding one positive and one negative gets me 0. Okay. So we are actually going to model on a number line and on our counters at 1. So we're going to do the number line, and then underneath we'll do the counters. And this is just so we can see visually what happens when we add integers with different signs. So we're going to start from 0. We're going to go to the right. We're going to get to 4, put our dot, and then remember from our last lesson, we are going to go -3 will always be to the left. Okay, and so we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and we end up at 1. +1. So notice on the number line, we go opposite directions, but that's because they're opposite signs. So if we use our counters, just another way to visually see it, we are going to take +4 plus signs. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to add to the problem 3 negative. So I just added 3. That's what the problem says. 4 plus -3. So just like our key term said, zero pairs is when I have one positive added to one negative. Well, if you can see, I've got 1 here. Well, that makes 0. So that pretty much is gone. 0 doesn't mean anything. So that's out of the problem. And then I have another one here. There's another 0 pair. So that's 0 plus 0. That's just 0. I have one more here. So now I have 0 plus 0 plus 0, and I'm left with this 1 positive. And as you can see, 1 positive, 1 positive. So that's what it looks like with counters. So that's just the problem. That's the sum. I took 4 positive, I added 3 negative. Because of 0 pairs, we end up with +1. So the same thing when it's negative first. So this time we're going to start by going to the left towards -7. All right, my arrow's a little far, but that's okay. Right here. We're going to add 5. Positive goes to the right because that's my numbers are getting bigger. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we went to the right. So notice again, opposite of each other. And we end up at -2. -2. So I want you to notice we're not just adding these together. What are we actually doing? I didn't add 4 plus 3 to get 7. I didn't add 7 plus 5 to get 12. What did I do? So now we're going to do counters. So I'm going to start with 7 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to put my 7th over here because I ran out of room. This is what I start with. That's what it says. Start with -7. I'm going to add +5 to the problem. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we're going to look for our zero pairs. And so that's a positive with a negative. So there's 1 0, 2 zeros, 3 zeros, 4 zeros, 5 zeros. Those are all 0. Just like I circled them, they become zeros. And as you can see, what we're left with that doesn't have a zero pair are 2 negatives. And there it is, -2. So that's what a zero pair does to our problem. We get things out of our problem. They are taken away. They do not affect our problem. Okay, so zero pairs when we use counters, and opposite directions when we use a number line. So what does that mean? How do we do this when we have numbers bigger than 10? We got to apply a rule. So that's where this rule comes in. So counters and number lines are great if they're less than 10, but when they become bigger than 10, they're not very useful. So when we have adding with different signs, the rule says we're actually going to subtract the lesser absolute value from the greater absolute value. So remember that absolute value is how far away a number is from 0. Remember that means the number is always positive, the answer. And then we're going to use the sign of the integer with the greater absolute value for the sum. So what that's saying is when we're done, whatever number had the bigger absolute value, our answer has the same sign. Okay, and I know it's weird, we're subtracting, but it's really an addition problem. Well, if we look at these examples they gave us, 5 take away 3 is 2. And if we look back at our examples, 7 take away 5 is 2, and 7 had a greater absolute value. It was negative, so that's why our answer was negative. Same with 4 take away 3, that's 1. 4 had a greater absolute value of 4 than -3, which is 3, and so that's why our answer was positive. So let's look at number 7, where it has numbers larger than 10, so I'm not going to use counters and I'm not going to use a number line. Okay, so I'm going to do number 7 right here. Oh, still have my red pen. So if I take the absolute value of -51, well, -51 is 51 away from 0, so that's 51. And then 23, absolute value is 23. And since it's lesser, I'm going to subtract it from 51. So that's what the first thing says. Take their absolute values and subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger absolute value. So don't forget to borrow. We cannot take 3 away from 1. So 11 take away 3, 11, 10, 9, 8. And then 4 take away 2 is 2. Now our answer, is it positive 28 or negative 28? Well, we have to look at our original numbers. So it says take the sign of the bigger absolute value. This was -51, its absolute value was 51. This is positive 27, its absolute value, or 23, sorry, and its absolute value is 23. Since -51 has a larger absolute value, we take its sign, -28. I had more negatives to start with, so I'm going to end up with negatives in the end. So why don't you pause here and see if you can do 8, 9, and 10. And then when you're done doing 8, 9, and 10, push play, see if you got the same work and answers as I did. Okay, so here's number 8. So absolute value of 10 is 10. And absolute value of -18 is 18. That's the greater absolute value. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to go 18, take away 10. Well, that gets me 8 take away 0 is just 8, and 1 take away 1 is 0. And then since 18, negative 18 has the larger absolute value, my final answer is also negative. More negatives than positive, so the answer is negative. Okay, so here's number 9. Absolute value of positive 13 is 13. Absolute value of negative 13 is also 13. So we just take 13, take away 13, and we get 0. Now, since 0 does not have a positive or a negative symbol to it, it's just 0. But that is like having $13 and spending all of it. So that's why we end up with 0 and not 26 or negative 26. And then the last one, 10. We will do 26, take away 25. And that's because the absolute value of negative 26 is 26, which is larger than the absolute value of 25, which is 25. So we subtract, we get 1. The absolute value of negative 26 is larger, so my answer is negative 1. Okay. So if you need to see that again or hear it again, just rewind. So then we go to things to remember. So there are some things we want to remember. We want to remember to keep the sign of the larger absolute value. Okay, keep the sign. Or whatever it is that helps you remember how to add integers with different signs. How about the fact that we are supposed to actually subtract and not just add? We actually subtract. And then the last thing is questions. So don't forget, your questions are important. Is it that you want me to go over number 7 again? Is it that you don't understand why we're subtracting? Your questions will drive what we talk about and go over when I see you. So don't hesitate to put those questions. If you can't hear something, put that too. Don't forget those questions. They're very, very important. Fill out your form, do the practice problems, put your questions. That's your assignment for today, as well as how I'll be taking attendance. I'm going to put it in as an assignment. So if you see it go as missing this afternoon, it means I never got your response. It will be an assignment. All right, see you guys next time.